Hello there my friends, it's Ebird Online and I'm back with another review, and today I'm going to be looking at the relationship of Kalani and Asuelu. This is 90 Day Fiance, Season 5, Episode 10, Drawing the Line. And today I'm going to be discussing what else? Asuelu's insatiably greedy and demanding family. Just before we begin, thank you to everyone who's subscribed to me so far. Thanks for all the support, but if you haven't done so yet, what are you waiting for? Please subscribe to my channel. And also you can follow me on Twitter at Ebird99. As per usual, we've got an awful lot to discuss, and I'll be posing you a few questions at the end of the video. But without further ado, I give you Kalani and Asuelu. So this week, Asuelu goes to see his mum and sister alone. Oh dear, I've got a feeling it's going to be like a lamb to the slaughter. And Asuelu tells us that dinner didn't end very well last week. Oh Asuelu, it could have been worse. I literally don't know how, but I guess it could have been. And guys, I couldn't believe what I was seeing when they stormed out of the restaurant last week. The Ebird would be as vexed as all hell, because Asuelu's mum and sisters stormed out mid-meeting because they were unable to get £1,000 from Asuelu. But that's not the worst of it. They hadn't even finished eating the best of the best food. If there's one thing I can't bear, it's food wastage. But it's a good idea for him to go on his own. That way Kalani won't feel the wheels going over when he throws her under the bus. And I have got a feeling that Kalani acts as a trigger to the mum and sisters, so I think it's a good idea that he's decided to tackle things alone. And although it might well be difficult because he only has the reasoning skills of a 3-year-old, he's up against his mum, seemingly the person from whom he inherited his natural stupidity. And so Asuelu arrives, and the mum and 2 sisters are sitting on the sofa, and he presents them with the gifts that he and Kalani purchased the week before. They're quite effusive about the gift, however I can't help but notice Tammy's sitting there staring at him accusingly. And they ask once again about the money, and Asuelu tells them that he's now living in America and he wants to act like an American man and to provide for his family, and he can't afford at the moment to give them $1,000 and to provide for his children. And Tammy said, but this is your duty. I always send money home. And Asuelu pointed out to her, you've been in America for years. You are established here. I am not. I'm just making my way. And guys, I find this exchange quite interesting. Tammy's obviously had time to think and craft her lies since last week, because in the restaurant when Kalani asked her, do you send money home? She gave her the evil eye for about 15 minutes. And she coupled this with an evil mouth when she said, it's none of your business. But suddenly this week, she always sends money home. If you send money home, they won't need Asuelu's then, will they? And his mum said, you forget about me and your father. I think that you don't love us. And Asuelu tried to say, don't just love me for my money. Kalani's family, well, they love each other no matter what. It doesn't matter if there's no money. And really, we all have to sit back and take a moment to imagine what it would be like not to enjoy the unconditional love of a parent. To have love given only if you provide money. And for this, I feel very sorry for Asuelu. And Tammy says, Kalani's family, Kalani's family, Kalani's family. What about our family? And Asuelu tells production, I love my parents. And I guess he does, give or take 1 or 2 of them. And his mum employs her one remaining brain cell to explain to him, we're only asking you for your money. We don't want Kalani's money, just yours. And Asuelu says, but I'm not a single man anymore. Kalani's money is my money and my money is Kalani's money. And Tammy then said, Mum, forget about it. Nothing's going to change here. Asuelu does whatever Kalani tells him. She's an older woman controlling a young man. All she wants is control. Really, Tammy? So you and your sisters and his mum haven't been controlling Asuelu previously? I think so. And Tammy tells production, when he married Kalani, I thought, oh great, she's going to be able to send money home to help out with our family in Samoa, but it hasn't worked out like that. And then Tammy goes in for the kill, and she said, you only married Kalani because she got pregnant. And this was too much for Asuelu. And he gets up to leave. He tells us that he thinks Tammy hates Kalani. You don't say. And he tells production he realises now he's going to have to choose between his family and Kalani. His mum said, oh, don't leave, wait. But Tammy said, just leave him. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about Tammy because I think she's the one pulling all the strings. And the next time we see this couple, they're with their kids and they're going to a goat farm to see some goats. Kalani tells us she doesn't know what was discussed last night, but she's not asking Asuelu because he seems quite down about it. It's just as well she doesn't know because Kalani, you're getting all the blame. So they tell us that the mum's going to be meeting them later on today, and I wonder to myself, where are the sisters? Are they not interested in seeing their nephews? It would seem not. And so when they get there, they have a nice little scene where baby Oliver jumps out of the car and he goes to pet the goats, then he starts chasing them, and literally he's chasing these 2 massive goats around a field. It was quite amusing because the woman in charge said, if we could minimise the goat chasing, that would be appreciated. Lady, are you freaking serious? Goats have got horns. If you've raised goats, so tame they can be chased around by a 2-year-old, that's on you. But it was funny because Oliver wasn't in the least bit scared of them. It would seem that Oliver's got more balls than Daddy. And Asuelu's mum comes up and she looked at the goat and she stroked it lovingly, and it was heartwarming to see. So she has got some maternal instinct after all. And then she asks, can I eat it? And she lived right down to my expectations. As she was stroking the goat, she was imagining him in a curry on her plate with rice and peas, plantain and a side of coleslaw. How very unsurprising. And they all sit down to talk, and she asks Asuelu, are you still angry with your mum? Oh, Asuelu's mum, even if he forgets, he'll never, ever forgive. And nor will the Ebird. But Asuelu says, no, I'm not angry with you. However, I'm in America now, so I'm trying to do the American life. And she said, but you're Samoan. You know the Samoan way. I'm a very poor woman. And he said, Mum, I love you, but I still need to put my kids first. She said, if you were a real Samoan man, you would be able to do both. You need to get a full-time job. And he does need to get a full-time job, but even when he does so, it won't be to give you $1,000. It will be to look after his family independently and not live in Kalani's parents' house. And he tells production, it's different in Samoa. You don't really need money. You can sleep in a house for free. You can pick fruit off the tree. So after seeing what they were saying last week, I decided to have a quick look at Samoan culture. And they do live very differently. It's a very communal way of life, so I can imagine money is often pooled. But they sleep in houses which are out in the open, and in some of these homes there are up to 20 people in one room. And I don't think that's necessarily because they're poor, I think it's because the whole extended family live together and ergo pool their resources. But obviously they just build the houses from scratch, there's no rent to pay, so everything is free. And you can live by picking fruit and vegetables from the land, and they have their own livestock. And I also looked into Asuelu's background a little bit, and he worked as an activities director at a holiday resort in Samoa. I've never been to Samoa, but I have travelled extensively worldwide, and in many, many poor countries, the staff that work at resorts get given tips in euros and pounds and dollars, and they usually get a considerably higher salary than the average of that country. So I've got a feeling that Asuelu, when he was back home, had an awful lot of money at his disposal and not a lot to spend it on, and so thus he gave it to his parents quite freely. But obviously things are slightly different now. He's in America, where things are expensive to purchase in the first instance. And then Asuelu pointed over the way, and there were some homeless people living in tents. And he said, if I don't pay the bills, we'll be living on the streets. My children, they will die. And he started crying, and he said, I don't want this to happen. But his mum seemed very unmoved, and she said, my son, don't cry. However, your sister Tammy has told you what you need to do. And Kalani said, are you saying that you still need him to send money? And his mum said, I am. He used to do it before he met you, but then he just stopped. And as we remember last week, his mum wanted to send money to the church, to elders and to people in Samoa. It's not just for her. And Kalani can't believe her eyes. She said, to see your son crying and then to say, we still need money. This woman is a crazy bee. And this whole conversation took place in front of the kids, which isn't ideal. They're already having to deal with watching Asuelu grow up before their very eyes. Although it is at a slower pace than them, there's only so much kids can deal with. And his mum reverts to type and gives him another evil stare. And she says to producers, they must work harder. They need to make money for me. And that's where we leave things for this week. And so here are the Ebird's thoughts on this week's drama. I feel very sorry for Asuelu because he has offered them $100. And I believe that if he were in America and they were all in Samoa, $100 would be more than sufficient. But they're obviously living in America, which of course is far more expensive. But she keeps going on about Samoa and Samoan culture. You are living in America now. You know how expensive everything is. I would understand it a little bit more if they had no idea how much things cost in America and they just had this idea of, you know, the streets being paved with gold and everybody having loads of money, and they didn't know the reality. They're very well aware of the reality because they too are living it. If his sisters cannot make ends meet and his mum cannot make ends meet in America, how do they think that he can, being less established than them and having a wife and 2 very young children? Question for Kalani's sisters. What does your American dream look like? Was it your dream that Asuelu would meet somebody American, move over, and then be able to look after you in America? What would you be doing if Asuelu was still in Samoa, earning Samoan money? That would definitely be of no use to you. So do we think that Asuelu is going to be able to resolve this issue? I think one of the biggest problems is Asuelu is unable to express himself in a linear and considered manner. So whenever he's involved in a conflict, he either walks away, gets the bus to Utah, or swears, or cries. He has never ever, to my knowledge, been able to offer a reasonable argument to convince someone of his cause. And it's this that's going to cause him lifelong problems. He attempted to argue this week that he's now following American customs rather than Samoan ones, but obviously Asuelu's parents, who seem to have met at a family reunion, still believe that he should pay for them, lock, stock and barrel. And it seems that Asuelu's problems are mounting. This is mixed with the fact that he hasn't got the greatest of relationships with Kalani and her family, so he seems to be stuck between a rock and a hard place. But I think the worst protagonist for Asuelu is sister Tammy, and she's a master manipulator. And I think she spends her time winding Asuelu's mum up. When Asuelu stormed out last night, she said, "Mum, just leave him." And she has a dual characteristic of being both passive-aggressive and aggressive-aggressive. In fact, thinking about it, she also looks as though she may well be physically aggressive. If there's one thing about Tammy, she's got those aggressives covered. So last week when Asuelu was telling his mum that he could give her $100, Tammy looked at the deaf sister and she signalled that $100 was too small. Tammy, instead of saying, "We all feel that you need to give more," Asuelu said, "My sister's saying you need to give more." And this is evidence of Tammy at her passive-aggressive best. And Tammy tells Asuelu, "Kalani manipulates you." She isn't concerned that he's being manipulated, just that she's no longer the one to be doing the manipulating. And Tammy doesn't let that missing chromosome get her down. She's got an answer for everything. When he says we'll be homeless, don't worry, live with Kalani's parents. How will I feed my kids? Kalani will feed them. You just need to feed us. Tammy, how will I get my kids presents? Give them I Spy with my little eye. She believes she can have every penny from Asuelu's pocket, and if the kids need anything, well, that's down to Kalani. So guys, what do you think? Do you think that Tammy's winding his mum up even more? I certainly do. I also think some of the money is for her as well, not just for Asuelu's elders and the church. I personally don't see a way for him to resolve this, other than saying to his mum, "I'll give you and you alone $100 a month and that is it." He needs to try to get himself a full-time job, but I'm loath to tell him to cut them off and just focus on his nuclear family, because I don't see it for him and Kalani, unfortunately. I honestly think that Asuelu doesn't have the mental capacity to deal with life in the same way that Kalani does, and I think it's wearing thin and it's on the verge of snapping. So guys, tell me what you think. Do you think there's any way out for Asuelu? Do you think that Tammy is the master manipulator? And what would you do in this situation? Please let me know in comments down below and I'll answer as many comments as possible. And it just leaves for me to say, please subscribe to my channel if you've yet to do so, and also don't forget to press the like button if you've enjoyed this video. You've been listening to Ebird Online. Ciao for now.